Bam.
This is Mike Abramowitz, and you're watching the Break It Down show.
All right, we did it. Thanks for having me on your show. First off, it's always fun to do that. And I like to do these, like back-to-backers because you get a chance to know me, I get a chance to know you. And then we're doing another show before, there's even been space to really lose track of that introduction and everything. So I appreciate you having me on yours, and I appreciate you coming on mine, man.
Yeah, I'm excited for the conversation and flipping the script a little bit.
Yeah, so some of the stuff that you've done is the classic underachiever stuff. No, I mean, to be serious here, Mike's written a bunch of books and conquered weight loss for yourself and help others unlock these things, like these tools that we all have available. When did it become apparent to you that you were going to be able to do this, not just for yourself, but for other people?
I would say I was in a really, really rough valley of my 20s, is what I call it. And I was stuck. I was stuck. The circumstances were terrible. I invested young. I had 3 rental properties in my early 20s, and then market collapsed in 2008. I lost the properties. I was negative $130,000. I had a 400 credit score. My relationship just ended of 7 years. I had death of loved ones, and I did not feel like getting off the couch. It was a really tough season as I was grinding in my business, working my tail off, trying to just climb myself out of this hole. And then 2012, I went to my first Tony Robbins event, and I was a fire walker. And I'm a 7-time fire walker now. And at that event is when I heard my mess is my message. So everything that I experienced in my 20s, I then turned into speaking 300 hours that year in 2013, 2014, speaking to the Pinellas County School District in Clearwater, Florida, crafting that message, which turned into my first book, Grab Tomorrow Your Best Year Ever. And that turned into the passion project of PB&J for Tampa Bay, where we provided over 100,000 meals to less fortunate. And just me speaking, I created a curriculum for the schools. But the challenge was I had my direct sales business, I was speaking, I had my books, I did all these things, and I was serving my purpose. But then I fell in love and realized if I wanted to have a family and be a father and be a little bit more present, then some things would have to change, which led me to hiring a business coach to help me systemize my business and buy back my time. And on the other end of that, of course, we could get into that part of the story. But to answer the question, I think from the moments of desperation in my early 20s and my valley of my 20s led me to saying, I got to really figure this thing out, all because I wanted to be a present father. I wanted to be a present husband. I wanted to be financially free and time free and location freedom. But man, sometimes circumstances in life, there's some curveballs.
Yeah, well, and that curveball machine doesn't stop, right? Like it continues to throw them. I was saying to my buddy the other day, I was just checking in because we haven't talked for a while, and we don't have to talk a whole lot to be great friends. But I'm like, hey, life gets busy, and apparently it's not going to get any lighter. It's just going to continue to get heavy because where I am here in mid 50s, we've got parents that are dying or taking forever to pass, and so that whole weight of Alzheimer's, dementia, all these kind of afflictions that older people get, that you have to slow your life down to go provide care for the person that cared for you. And there's just no good answer in so many of these cases. And so life does not stop throwing them curveballs. Matter of fact, I'd say it would start throwing harder, more powerful curveballs.
And everything that happens before those curveballs is what prepares us for the ones that are coming up. And that's why I truly believe the seasons of life, the seasons, those curveballs, we'll call them winter season, the seasons of unpredictability. So the winter season unpredictability, how do we navigate a winter season is different than how we navigate a spring season or a summer or fall. Winter, we navigate unpredictability with three ways. We either get some sleds and skis and enjoy it. We nuzzle up by the fireplace and just wait out the storm, or we tire ourselves out, shovel in the snow as it comes down. But if we do that, we're going to be tired for the spring season. Spring always follows winter, and we want to be in a position to plant the seeds in spring. Well, what seeds are we planting in spring? If we're planting apple seeds in spring, well, we're going to get apples in fall. If we're going to plant orange seeds in spring, we're going to get oranges in fall. So we're going to be intentional. What seeds are we planting in spring? Then in summer, we're working our tail off, grinding, fostering the seeds, having the high intentionality of making sure those fruits bear. And then in the fall, we reap the reward of those seeds, of the fruit. Well, how do we approach fall? Do we just eat up all of our food and our resources? No, we got to make sure we are navigating and protecting ourselves against the unpredictable winter season and strategizing and figuring out what are the next round of seeds that we want to plant for spring. So every season has its own intentionality, and it's going to happen. So curveballs are going to happen. Winter is going to happen, just like all the other seasons are going to happen. So I love JFK's quote. He said, "The best time to work on the roof is when the sun is shining." So fall season, if things are good in fall, that's when we want to make sure that we're preparing for our winters. We want to build those business systems. We want to set up those foundations. We want to foster those relationships. And when we're in spring, we want to be intentional with the seeds that we're planting. So, that's what shows up for me when I hear this about the curveballs.
Yeah, no, that's great. One of the things that Anthony Robbins does, or Tony Robbins does, he's great at like the physical aspects of this too. Like you need to be healthy to withstand all that work on the roof. You need to get, like breathing properly and just all of these other things that are the maintenance of you yourself, so that you're not just this beat up Ford F-150 work truck just careening from job to job, but you're able to like take care of the person physically, mentally, spiritually. So talk a little bit about how that practice unlocked for you in your 20s, because that has to be part of it.
Well, I would say I had to grow up a little faster than most, in the sense that mom got diagnosed with ovarian cancer when I was 16, and she passed away when I was 20. And I moved out of New Jersey as the youngest of 8 and went to college at the University of South Florida. So I really claimed my independence early on, and I got into sales with vector marketing and Cutco cutlery when I was 18 years old. So I had a strong foundation for my mom with moral courage, and she was so compassionate. She was so willing to help other people. We always like adopted pets and invited people in our home. And my dad's super ambitious and extremely hardworking. Worked 6 days a week my whole life in his plumbing business, and just extremely dedicated to providing for the family. So I had these great foundational skills. I saw my older siblings that were ahead of me being really dedicated to their work. And one of my brothers is like just love to travel and create all these unbelievable signature experiences. And another one of my brothers just being a great parent for my nieces and nephews, his kids. So I had great role models of what were examples for me. But then I also saw a bunch of warnings. So I saw like my sister married twice and divorced. I saw my brother married 3 times. My mom was on her 3rd husband. My dad was on his 2nd wife. So I saw a lot of divorce. I saw a lot of money conflicts. I saw a lot of this in my early adolescences. So where I was trying to like get ahead in my 20s, it added so much pressure on me to like perform and do well. But it was all self-imposed. It's a narrative that I didn't realize that I was the one narrating this. I was creating my own destiny. So once I went to that event, I had that breakthrough and I flipped the script a little bit. I think that narrative just changed to where I can get off self and on purpose. I can solve problems in the marketplace, and I am then compensated based upon the problems that I can solve. And the higher the problem, the larger the problem, the larger the compensation I'll get. So I just started equipping myself with a lot of skills, a lot of conferences, a lot of books, journaling, waking up early, doing cold therapy. I mean, just doing all the things that we know to do, but sometimes we don't necessarily follow through and do them. And created a different lifestyle for myself, going from negative $130,000 to being an accredited investor and being where we're at now today. It's just in a different place in just 10 years.
When you have these perspectives, you start to realize, oh my gosh, there's a lot of divorce in my family. There's a lot of money problems because divorce and lives are in crisis in some form or other. You get to like my point now, like again, like where you see your parents going through all these struggles and you think, oh my gosh, what am I creating for my kid? How do I also not only take care of myself, but how do I you look, you're trying to learn from the example that your parents laid down, and they're doing their best, right? And your brothers and sisters, we're all doing what we can. But how do you limit the amount of damage and chaos that you create in your kid's life? Obviously, not getting cancer, you can't control that. But the all of these lessons, right? You think, oh shoot, I got downstream, I got my family down here. How? So talk about that aspect of looking at how do you prevent what seems to be unpreventable, because we all arrive at this spot where we have to deal with something from our parents or whatever. So how do we not pass that gift on?
Well, right now I'm in a group called Front Row Dads. As soon as I became a dad, I joined this community and this brotherhood. If anybody's listening, if you're a solid dude, I highly recommend you to check it out. But this group is a bunch of dudes who are family men with businesses, not businessmen with families. And we know what our priority is. And we want to make sure that the first person that we are parenting is ourself. So we are reparenting our own traumas and inner childs and some of those things, so we don't project those insecurities onto our spouses and onto our kids. So there is a level of autonomy that we want to take control over on our personal lives and our relationships that is in our control. There are things that are not in our control. I'll tell you right now, Pete, when my son was born at 1 pound 4 ounces at 26 weeks, and that was out of our control, and I didn't know that we were going to be in the hospital with him for 8.5 months, 254 days. That was out of my control. I didn't know my wife was going to need to leave her corporate job that she was earning 80 grand a year at to become a full-time medical mom. And then I was going to be tasked with the challenge of replacing her income, even though while I was already, doing really well in my company, now I got to replace her income in the same amount of time. So it's like those circumstances happen. But when my back was against the wall, September 10th, 2021, when we got out of the hospital, I called my business coach. And he was the guy I hired in 2016 and helped me systemize my office to add in offshore virtual assistants, to add in technologies and automations and simplify, McDonaldify my business to create predictable outcomes. So that way, while we're in the hospital those 8.5 months, my business still produced 6 figures in profits and revenue without me there. I said, do you think we could teach this to people? So it's like from that place of challenge, I called my coach and I said, do you think we can teach this to people? He said, let's find out. And we created a business together, which is now called Better Than Rich. And we've now helped hundreds of other business owners learn how to do what I did, where you can buy your time back and build systems in the business to have time freedom. And it's just wild. When my back was against the wall and I said, how am I going to do this? I said, let's find out. And just from that mentality of let's find out, what can I do to add value to the marketplace? Really beautiful gifts that came out of that. My son is thriving now. He was fully vent dependent on a ventilator for 2 years of life. He had his trach, got his trach out last year, off the ventilator now for a year. He just started school. He's 3. He's still on his G-tube and feeding pump, but he is awesome. And we just had our new daughter that was born in December. So she's about 9 or 10 weeks old now. And she's awesome. So the so what of this for anybody listening, maybe you don't go through my circumstances exactly, but when you're being tested, that's okay. The what's the saying, that in school they teach you the lessons and then you take the test, but in life you take the test and then the test teaches you the lessons. And that's essentially what happened with me. And I think that happens with a lot of people too. So you can take control of what you can take control of, and whatever you can't, just reach a place of acceptance and ride it out as best as you possibly can with the least amount of consequence.
Yeah, man, that's great. Like, and to systematize these kind of sticking points and these pitfalls that are out there. And sometimes you got to go into the pit, but the ability to smooth out your road is great. And you just mentioned some curveballs in your own life, so it's not like life is treating you gently. You have to always be able to continue to do that work and invest in those things. Does it ever stop? Do you ever get tired of can I just get a break and just relax a little bit? Is there time when you just get to kind of float on the lazy river of life?
Well, I would say that's the fall season, within reason. But last year in 2023, I mean, I took 9 full weeks off last year, and then I had every weekend, every evening, every Monday is a personal day, and every morning to myself. So I created boundaries in my schedule at this season of life during fall season to be able to still execute on my passion, planting seeds on things that I'm really excited about, while simultaneously having those boundaries in my schedule and to be able to make priorities stay priorities. I think too many people say, this is my priority, but it's like when then the phone rings and we enter reaction mode, we enter into distractions. The phone is texting, social media, then we're like super engaged and scrolling and whatnot. It's like, oh, but my family's my priority, but I'm constantly on my device. So I think we need to create those boundaries in our life to protect those boundaries, to correct those priorities. And if we want to go on a lazy river and that's a priority, great. Just create a boundary around it. Oftentimes, I'll share this with you, Pete. There was a time when we were. It was right around when we got out of the hospital. I think it was right before when we were in the hospital. I was drained. I was fried, and I was talking to my coach at the time. I was like, I don't know what I need to do, but I need to rejuvenate. He said, if it was a dream role, what would you do? And I said, I would go in, take 4 days, and just get lost with no technology and just do nothing. He's like, what would need to happen for you to be able to do that? I said, I don't know. He said, let's find out. So I talked to my wife. I went to a dude ranch. In Florida. I found one. I drove out to the middle of the state of Florida. I went to a dude ranch. I rode horses. I walked in nature. I slept a ton. Like I slept 14 to 16 hours one of those nights. I read all my old journals. I read a bunch of books. This was Friday, Saturday. And then by Sunday, I was bored out of my mind. And I ended up coming home early on Monday morning instead of Tuesday morning because I was so bored and I was so recharged. So sometimes we don't need like a 6-month sabbatical to recharge. We might just need like 3 uninterrupted days or like one uninterrupted day, a really good night's sleep just to recharge to be able to be able to get into the next season of life.
Yeah, that's great. And we often forget that, right? We forget that, especially if we're integral to our family or our friends' lives, we forget to how to change gears, how to slow down, how to take care of ourselves. Now, my brother who passed away, one of his challenges on his path towards his conclusion was he couldn't bear the thought of slowing down enough to make sure that he was the number one priority in his well-being. And now we don't have him around anymore, in part because of that. Maybe he was too sick to get there, but those lessons, man, they hit home in terms of pulling back and seeing that there are seasons and things are going to change. They always do. There are good times, there are bad times, there are times for growing. All of these things, and it's great to hear that you've laid that out. You're talking a lot about coaching and groups and that kind of thing. What if you're not one of those people? Like I've got a lot of veteran friends who are like, I don't like group therapy. They don't like any kind of therapy that involves someone talking about, whatever they have to talk about, but they find other ways to do it and they find their path. So if you aren't a coaching person, if you aren't a men's group or dude ranch kind of person, what do you do? Like, how do you sort out what kind of person you are in terms of getting help and minding yourself through these trouble times?
Well, so here's the thing. When I hear therapy, I think about dealing with the past. When I hear coaching, I think about dealing with the future. So it really it depends on what their needs are, and I would meet someone where they're at. So if I have a good buddy of mine. He works with veterans who are dealing with some sort of PTSD and some sort of trauma, and the tough part is you're right. People don't want to ask for help because they don't think they need help. So therefore, if that's an individual, the first thing I would say is the most courageous thing you can do and the most selfless thing that you can do for yourself and others is know that where you are right now in this chapter of life is not necessarily who you are or who you are meant or who you are called to be. And then you have to ask yourself, what do you need? Do you need one-to-one? Do you need a community? How do you work best? Are you going to do it yourself? I don't know the answer to that, but there's been times where it's like I had no resources. I went to the public library and just read books. And as I evolved and I got more in tune with what my needs are, that's when I said, let me hire a coach one-to-one. Then I was like, man, I really think multiple people's perspectives would be helpful. And that's when I went to community. What is community? Common unity. So it's like a bunch of people who are looking to get the exact same thing accomplished. So I wouldn't be a PTSD veteran joining a mom group talking about how they, are hate diaper rashes, right? So it's like being in the space with the same avatar with your comrades, I think is appropriate. Sometimes you want to find your tribe. We're tribal beings. That's what we are as humans. So who is your tribe? Who can you connect with? How can you get from where you are to where you want to be? And if you're a business owner, how do you leverage your business to be a vehicle to get you there? Your business is not your life. Your business is a vehicle to help you aggressively pursue the things that you want in your life. It is not your life. It's a vehicle.
Some of the words that you're using are words that don't 100% align with what I would say, like my portion of the early Gen X folks, like intentionality, right? I'm a little more hands off the wheel. Like, hey, you can't control all these things. I change my mind a lot. I'm whimsical. I sell myself on a great idea because I see something and I want to be that thing. And so if I'm planting intentionality seeds, that makes me uncomfortable because I know Pete good enough to know that, like, he's like, forget that. And then I have a dry season because I walk away from a field of seeds that I planted. So I guess how do you deal with that? With them, like, there's like, you keep digging. The gold is just another inch down, right? And the person who digs the most wins the most, except for the person who's like, hey, I'm going to go do something completely different, and I'm going to go sell the digger some shovels, and they pivot, and that's their thing. So how do you manage that intentionality? How do you know when to say time to change, and how do you know when it's time to hunker down and get into this? How do you know if you're in a groove or in a rut?
So that's a good question, because essentially the question we've been asking is what season am I in? I think it's really the same question. So perspective is important. You might be in the spring season for business, but being in a winter season with your relationship. So it is important to take that step back, and that's why those boundaries in your schedule is important. If I were this person, I would invite them to sit with themselves with nothing else, in complete positive boredom, with maybe a journal, until they know the answers to what season they're in. Once they know what season they're in, then we could approach and tackle the season. But if I don't know, I don't want to take summer strategies into winter, because if I take hard work, grind strategy into a winter season where snow constantly is coming down, I'm going to tire myself out. I want to take a different approach to a different season. So, for example, if I'm in a winter season in my marriage and my wife hates me, she's cheating on me, she's you name it, and I'm just fed up, and we're just having such a shitty time together, right? If that's the season I'm in, I'm not just gonna. This calls for a different type of situation than if I'm in a season where we are in a honeymoon stage, of our season. That we have fall season of our marriage. It's a different strategy, a different approach. But I need to be aware of what season I'm in. Once I'm aware of it, then I can tackle it. How do I become aware? Sit in silence, sit without distractions. I think this person, if they don't know what season they're in, because they're constantly in distraction or reaction mode, they're constantly feeding themselves addictions to numb themselves, so that way they don't know. They're numbing themselves with porn, or they're numbing themselves with food, or they're numbing themselves with alcohol, or numbing themselves with fun, or travel, or business, or accomplishments, or social media, or scrolling. All these dopamine hits, they're just numbing themselves with these addictions, so that way they don't have to feel. And I'm suggesting get yourself away from all that stuff for 1, 2, 3, 4 hours of just positive boredom, and see what your mind and body are really trying to tell you. That would be my suggestion for that person. Why? That's what my Mondays are for. My Mondays are exactly for that. I do whatever the hell Mike feels called to do on Mondays. There's been Mondays, Pete, where I would just put a lawn chair in my car and I would just drive. And there was one time specifically, I went to Olive Garden, all you could eat soup, salad, and breadsticks. And then I posted up in a park nearby under a tree, and I watched the ducks for like 3 or 4 hours, and I took a nap. And then I went and got an ice cream cone from Burger King drive-through because I saw it. And I was like, all right, I want to get that. Like, that was an example of a Monday for me. But on the other end of that day, I had such great epiphanies of things that I could do for my business. I've had Mondays where I would just go play golf, Mondays where I would get a massage, Mondays I go to the gym, Mondays where I want to go play basketball. I mean, there's been so many days, and sometimes Mondays I just work in just strategy. We're reconnecting to like what's important to me and what's important to the business. So having that personal time, maybe it's not a full day, maybe it's a half a day, maybe it's a morning, but got to have that time in your schedule. It's been a game changer for me, and protecting it with boundaries.
Yeah, that's great, man. I love that. And it goes all back to that, making sure you take care of you, because it is easy to go find, like, I'm just going to hunker down and work and we'll just take care of the relationship stuff and the financial stuff later, right? Like, I need to work for somebody else as well. And you're like, I'm going to work 80 hours a week, like, or don't, like when people talk about work life balance, they rarely mean like, I got too much good stuff in my life. They usually mean I'm crushing myself working for somebody else. How do I do less of that and get comfortable with the consequences of that? And you're saying, hey, if you do manage these things, you do set boundaries, boy, there's a lot of things that you can do for yourself, that even if your job is just your job and it pays for the bills and everything else, knowing when to. My buddy Jason is great at this. He skateboards. He's in his 50s, and all of the skateboarding legends are his friends now. And he's like, I work because it allows me to go do the thing that I love doing, which is skateboard. He makes plenty of money, but he works on high end, works on cars, and he goes and skates, and that's what fulfills him, and that's what he does. And he's put a very firm boundary between, once my shift is over, you get 100% professional work when I'm there, but the second I leave, that is a job. It means nothing to me. I'm going to go in this direction, and I'm not going to focus on what my boss might think or anything else. Like, I know I've done a good job, and now I'm leaving, and now I'm going to go grab my skateboard.
If you know what your thing is, I mean, whether it's the skateboard or the golf club, today, right as soon as I finish at 3 p.m., I'm going to play tennis with a buddy. It's know your thing, know what recharges, know what rejuvenates you. And have your drop down menu. It's a great exercise. Favorite things. It's in one of my books. Favorite things exercise is a great one that you can recharge yourself with. So one of the things I will say to anybody that's listening, especially again, I mainly love talking with business owners, because I think entrepreneurs are the change agents for the change that I want to see in the world. I think if I run a business, then I can provide jobs, and I could use my business as a force for good for my local community. And I can solve problems that people have in the world. And I love the whole conscious capitalism model. I really buy into that. So if someone is running a business, I really think it's important for them to focus on their genius, their zone of genius, because the same distraction idea that we were talking about, numbing there and addictions, oftentimes business owners do that with like administrative tasks, or they'll do that with their low cost activities. They're like, oh, this is easy, so therefore I could do it. But the mentality shift is, if it's easy to do, then it's easy to delegate. So that way the business owner spends time in their zone of genius in the work that only they can do, and offload and delegate everything else. And a lot of times business owners have that scarcity mindset where it's like, well, I don't want to pay someone to do something that I could do. Well, that's the challenge. If I could pay someone $15 an hour to do something that's $15 an hour task, and my dollar per hour is worth $75 or $150 per hour, you're actually not doing something that's saving you money. You're doing something that's costing you. Buy back your time for $15 an hour and do the tasks that are $100 an hour. Stop being addicted to just checking boxes and start doing the things that are revenue producing activities in your business.
Yeah, I turned the podcast option on my show off because it was just costing me money, and it was a cost center, and I had offshore all that work, but it wasn't generating any value, right? I'm really big on like, how do I create value in this exchange? I'll connect if there's someone that I think that needs to know you, or you need to know them. Man, I'm going to do that connection. I'm always trying to create those things as part of my business, and that creates for me opportunities. They're like, hey, Pete, do you know someone who whatever, and then I'll say, oh, actually, I knew that person. And so I'll connect those people together. And that's sort of how I run my business. And that has turned into the ability to, what seems like the ability to make documentaries, right? And look, people are going to get paid. Everybody's going to get paid. We're going to run a fair organization. We're going to run a fair shop. We're going to take our budget, and everybody's going to get paid professionally to do their work. So I'm not even worried about the money aspect of it. Do I have to go win that money and convince someone the show is good? Okay, great. Yeah. But that's my job. That's my zone of genius. But I am so not worried about the budget part of it because there's professional people that work, and I accept that like they need to get paid to do their job. That part is like a byproduct of the great thing that we're going to create is this opportunity. And it's not just a documentary. Like there's these opportunities to tell stories in this fashion and bringing in other notes that I'm making something that hopefully has synergy and is better than just being, the next documentary that you watch. But that requires me to let go of a lot of things that would be precious to me normally. And I'm old enough now to go like that. That's not important. This isn't important. That person needs to get paid. Like my friends, if I talk, a lot of these people are my friends. Like you're talking to me, you're going to get paid at a professional price. Do not give me the friend price because the person who's going to pay for this movie expects professional stuff, not friend stuff. So hit me with the full number. And now I'm playing in a different space because I'm not worried about all of the little things that really are at best tertiary in my life.
It's great. And what's nice is you with the documentaries, I know we obviously had a conversation on our podcast. It brings light to problems that you want to solve that other people can solve too. And I think it's a great initiative.
Yeah. And hopefully it's one thing to say you're going to do them. It's a whole nother thing to get them to get off the ground and fly and be like, there it goes. Holy shit. It's a miracle. So there's that too. And I guess that's what I want to ask you is when you look like you've done these amazing things, like with the PBJ and the charity just to give out tons and tons of meals. You've written books and everything. At some point, you're going to look and think, and you probably are, what can't I do? Like, what do I need to take on next? And I know if you're like me at all, and there's 25 ideas I'd like to do. Which one survives the culling? And it's like, boop, I'm the one that you need to do. So how do you deal with the culling? And like, how big are you going to jump on your next big thing?
Well, it's a good question, and I like to model the one thing philosophy. So the One Thing by Gary Keller, it's a great book. So you got to know what the lead domino is, and what is the lead domino? What is the small hinge that swings the big door? And I need to know what is my one thing right now might not be my one thing in 6 months from now. So with me in business, for example, my one thing in the summer of 2023 was getting our KPIs in our organization, internal operations, more organized. And then that after Q2, Q3, then it shifted into, well, I'm about to have a newborn. It was like, man, I got to make sure that our marketing efforts are really strong. So then I said, I'm going to be on 100 podcasts between September and March. So that became my main thing for Q4. And then Q1 right now, my main thing is doing delegation planning sessions, adding value on these calls, and then helping people on the back end of that if our services can help them. So we could call it, the sales that come from adding value to the marketplace. So a lot of sales and brand development is a big focus right now. So the one thing right now might not be the one thing in 6 months from now, and it might not be the same one thing from 6 months ago. But I got to have one focus. If I have multiple focus, I'm chasing multiple initiatives, then they're all not going to get done.
Yeah. No, that's great. Yeah, you can have multiple things you're working on, but they need to sort of be in the same avenue. I'm assuming, like you can't just work on one documentary, right? Because they log jam, and then you got to go out and work on that bar. You got to find those hinges. So you want the other one to free up and buzz by, and you're like, oh, that one's got energy. Let me get over there. And so you're kind of like marching these things down a path.
Well, here's the thing with that example. There's two different parts that you just mentioned. There's fulfilling on a promise for someone I've already made the promise to, and then there's finding someone that I can create a partnership with. Those are two different approaches to business, two different departments of business. One is in the attract and one is in the retain. So we need to make sure that if we are doing we're doing both of them, we're attracting and we're retaining both at the same time. That would be where I would find another who and bring somebody on to help me with one or the other, whichever one is not in my genius or whichever one needs more support or needs more attention, because that means I'm constantly wearing two different hats. There's four four pillars of business: attract, convert, onboard, retain. And if I'm trying to bounce around from department to department and thing to thing, that I'm losing intentionality. I would focus on, if I'm in the season of attracting, I want to get as many of these accounts as possible. I'm going to try to get as many of these accounts as possible. Once I get the accounts, then it's like I'm only fulfilling on the accounts that I have, and I'm going to install somebody else into the attract. Say, you continue finding me accounts, but I got to go over here and I got to fulfill on the ones that I found, and have them replicate the process that was created on the attract as an example using that.
Yeah. No, that's great. It's kind of systematizing the attract or whichever cycle you're in. That's good. You've got your own. I was on it, and one of the is all the expertise I collect and the chances to have my mind blown, and all of that, because my show is really broad with the categories. We can do whatever we want, but it must be that you are getting things out of your show that you never anticipated when you started doing it. And then, so what are those things?
It's pretty loaded. Any way to get a little bit more specific on that one, please?
Sure. Look, when you take on a podcast, you've got an intention for it, right? And you think, this is what we're going to do, this is how we're going to get there. And look, getting past 10 episodes, and you're already one of the best shows of all time. Okay, so we got all that established. You're doing great with that. Okay. Then the show becomes its own thing. It becomes its own entity, its own engine, and it gets bigger than you in a lot of ways, right? And because you're here and you're massive, but it takes on shapes that you can't even appreciate. Because I had someone walk through the Dallas airport one time, and they pointed at me, and then they did my sound tag, dun-dun-dun. And I was like, holy shit, how did that happen, right? And look, I've had a show for a long time and everything, but it's never been like a massive hit. I'm consistent and everything else, but someone pointed at me and knew my Duracell sound that I had made, right? And so I've gotten things from my show that I never could have anticipated. And it's important that, like, I look around, like, what am I getting from the show? Like, why do you keep doing this, right? Because it creates tremendous opportunities for me. It creates all these avenues of humanity for me, right? And so, but I didn't plan that going in. I thought we were going to sell books on Amazon and talk to comedians.
And so the question could potentially be is what is an outcome that we can create from the show? Or
I'm asking you, like, with your show, what has arrived that you did not expect?
So what do we not expect? See, here's the thing. The show that we have, our podcast it's more of like, I don't want to say it's like a hobby, but it's something that we would just wanted to add value to the marketplace, to have a free value add. It falls under marketing for us, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
We wanted to add value. It's a way to meet great guests. It's an opportunity for marketing, not just for the listeners to the show, but an opportunity to meet really great people and have really good conversations with people. As far as like monetizing, like it's the monetization of the podcast was never our goal. The goal for the podcast was brand recognition, brand awareness, connect with really good people. Maybe it organically creates partnership, but we'll find out. We let that authentically and organically unfold. But there was very minimal attachment. We just have a lot to say, and we wanted that platform to say it. And then if it adds value to a bunch of people, which it has, then that's great. But we've contemplated shutting it down many times as we're approaching 200 episodes. But we just chose not to. We just continue to foster these new relationships with people and seeing where some of these partnerships have evolved and where they're going. And that's the value add. So it's nothing. Some of the friendships have been great. We've taken some of those conversations offline. We've done some partnership deals with some people. It is really fun when one example, I guess, would be Rachel Richards was a guest, and she was out at an event in Phoenix with a guy from Israel. And he said, I heard you on the Better Than Rich Show podcast. And she took a selfie with him. And he's like, I'm a huge fan of the show. That's so cool. Mike and Andrew. And I'm like, well, that's kind of cool, but like that's not the intent. Like it's like
Yeah,
great if I could
right.
add value, then that'd be great. Again, I don't know if that's a great answer. There's not much juice to that answer, but
No, I think the answer is great, and then maybe some of these things haven't germinated too, because so like you, I thought about shutting my show down a billion times, right? And it's like, okay, no, I still need to keep doing it, and I don't always know why. So my default is to just keep marching forward, right? And then something will click into place. And I'm like, never saw that coming, never saw that coming. I didn't know I was going to meet a bunch of astrophysicists and go on that journey. And these can be little side journeys, but I've the networking part of this, that wasn't part of, yeah, it'd be cool to know like famous people, right? But the true networking part of this thing, that was a discovered thing where I'm like, I can meet anybody. I can meet
that is
anybody,
true. Yeah, that is
Yeah.
true. I mean, we had former Mr. Canada Ben Pekulski on the podcast. I mean, that guy was
Hmm.
so impressive, and I mean, we have met some really cool people. Grant Baldwin, the Speaker Lab, and John Vroman, the founder of Front Row Dads, and Qasim Aslam, an 8-figure exit from his company Solutions 8. Nathan Hirsch, 7-figure exit from his company Free Up. So a lot of really Jim Shields, he has the 18 Summers. Was such a cool conversation. I mean, so many cool, awesome people that we've had on the show for sure. It's been fun.
Yeah. I know Nathan Hirsch.
Great guy.
How funny is that? Yeah.
Yeah,
He's a great
great.
guy. And he does,
Yeah.
that guy builds companies and they work. And I'm like, oh my God, if you ever want to do that for a living, that's the guy you got to pay attention to, because all he does is just continue to kill it with that, right? Nathan's awesome. He's down there in Florida with you, right?
Good question. I don't even know where he is. Probably.
Who cares? Yeah.
Yeah. I wouldn't blame him if he is in Florida. He should be.
Yeah.
It's a great spot.
Florida's nice. Yeah, Florida's nice. I like that. I used to live in Florida. It was awesome. I love the vibe, especially on the intercoastals and the Gulf side. Particularly suit me in terms of like my outdoors things that I want to do. I like it. There's all kinds of great spots in Florida though, and I'll tell you, as a California guy, all the way saying this, Florida dominates us on beaches. The beach for beach, inch for inch, Florida destroys California on beaches. We have beautiful beaches, but they are not what I think of as being the beautiful experience of being on a beach.
Yeah,
and so,
it is really nice. I mean, no state taxes is a nice little perk there too. So
yeah. We got a big state. It's hard to run this state. We have a lot of one of the things that's expensive here is the geographic diversity, right? Florida is not as geographically diverse, and all this stuff, it costs a lot of money to run this place. But whatever. Sure. We're not here to talk about that. What's coming up for you? Like, what's the next big thing? I mean, you got your kids, and they're young and they're exciting. So being a dad's a big thing always. But what's just past your reach?
Right now, I retired from my 20-year company that I've been at, and going full tilt with what I'm doing with Better Than Rich. So during the season, while I have the time freedom, I want to continue to help other business owners get their time freedom. So it's a pretty big goal, but we believe that we can help. My goal is I would say 300 is probably the number, but we want to help these business owners buy back 100 hours per month, every single month, and seeing what type of effect that could do. And over the next 20 years, if you do the math, it ends up being about like 10 million hours or something like that.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
it's pretty cool to think about what's possible. And with those individuals, that we can help them buy back 100 hours a month, what might that do for their marriages? What might that do for their businesses and their communities and their kids? And so that's what we're focusing on underneath the umbrella of what we're calling Time Rich. And we have the Time Rich 6, which is our pillars of boundaries, communication guidelines, systems, playbooks, team, and tech. And that's why we have these free delegation planning sessions right now. And that's why we have these free delegation planning sessions right now, because my purpose right now is to inspire these individuals to learn from me while I'm currently in the trenches with them, just a couple of steps ahead. So, and by the way, if any of your listeners they feel like that'd be beneficial to them. A time audit workbook to help them figure out what their dollar per hour wage is, what are the low value tasks, and what are the high value activities. And then I'll hop on with them for 30 to 40 minutes and help them figure that out with them as well. So and they could go to betterthanrich.com/90-day plan. And I would love to do that with them if they feel like that could be helpful. But that's really what I'm doing right now. I'm not going to be doing it forever, but betterthanrich.com 90-day plan is my focus to help these business owners buy back time.
I'm trying to get the 90-day plan link in here. So vamp for me for a couple of seconds. Give me a little more.
Yeah. So and by the way, for anybody that wants to take me up, I mean, who I'm really helping right now is if you're like a high earning business owner that says, I want to have a little bit more time for my mornings, or I want more time in the afternoon to take my kid to soccer practice, or I'd like to take that family trip and not have my cell phone. That's essentially what we need to figure out. What are the distractions and reactions you're going through that we can figure out how we can offload them? And that's my promise that we'll uncover and reveal during that session. So betterthanrich.com/90-day plan. So 90-day plan. And I'm doing them right now. I'm getting a lot of energy from them. In fact, I have one in 13 minutes right after we wrap. That's my last call of the week. I just am loving guesting on podcasts, as I'm on a mission of doing 100 of these guest appearances over the course of September to March, and then filling up my schedule with these 90-day plans and just connecting. It's market research for me to figure out what are those tasks that these business owners need to get offloaded. So it's helpful for me. It's helpful for them. So it's been really great.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I don't want to take any more of your time because I know you're trying to get time back, and we've covered a lot of ground because you had answers that were ready to go, and you're just so clear, crystal clear with how you're doing things and everything else. Everybody should definitely, the link is down below. It's also in the remarks, which are going to be over that way. And you can look down below, and it says betterthanrich.com/90-day plan. I got that straight off the website. You guys can do the same thing too. But Mike is a great guy. You can see that he's trying to help people do things. If you are an entrepreneur like me or a small business person and you're trying like, oh my God, I just need to stop doing invoices or whatever it is, that's the guy. I almost put the wrong hand up. That's the guy to talk to right there because he can help you do all that stuff. What else do you want to cover? What should I have asked you? Let's wrap this thing up. It's Friday after all.
I would just say, leaving this conversation, everyone that's listening to you, Pete, you did a great job on our episode. I think you're in the right place, listening to the show and hanging out with Pete on the Break It Down show. So, hook him up with a rating and review and subscribe to his channel and just continue to support the show. I think it's really great what you're doing. And I really appreciate you bringing me on and spotlighting me. And if I could help in any way, I'd love to help. betterthanrich.com/90-day plan. Let's chat.
Let's do it. All right, everybody. Definitely give a call. There's the link down there one more time. Stand by 1 second. I'm going to wrap this up and I'll wrap back to you. Hey, thanks for watching the show. I really appreciate it. Right here, you can subscribe. Please do that. It makes the show grow. Hit that notification bell so you know which incredible guest is coming up next. Down below is the PayPal link. You can put a small subscription in. That is an enormous help. All that money goes right back into the show. And then right up over here are the next episodes you should listen to, curated by yours truly. Thank you so much.